Hey, it's the Road Show. Gang's all here. Lots to talk about. A couple of you are heading out soon, so lots to fit in here in 45 minutes. But it's good to see you all. And I guess before it becomes old news, Dan, you and I should talk about your trip to Colorado to be a part of Pikes Peak, the hill climb. You glad you came?
What an event.
Yeah.
I am, and thank you for the hospitality.
We had a great time.
I think Pikes Peak became a bucket list item for me, and the first time I was aware of Pikes Peak, and I don't know if it's the same for you folks, but it was because of Gran Turismo, the video game. They had a Suzuki in the game, and this thing had more wings and more downforce than you can imagine, and it was called the Pikes Peak race, and I'm like, what's Pikes Peak? So, from a young age, it became a bucket list item. It was great, to attend. I think my expectations were probably slightly different than what the reality was, and it's because I just didn't know.
Yeah.
So, Dan, what did you feel like your expectations were?
Yeah.
I think I just wasn't aware of everything that goes on the week of Pikes Peak, right? So it's a triathlon for those that are driving it, and there's so many different variables. They only get to drive certain parts of the route. It's not the full run that they get to do.
Right.
There's no accounting for what the weather's going to be like. Everything, rain, fog. So leading up to race day, I don't think if you are an outside spectator, I don't think you realize everything that they've gone through to get to the start line.
Definitely not.
Put in a good time. So yeah, it was great from that perspective. I love the fact that I was there with Ryan and some of the folks from Porsche Colorado Springs, and we all had different folks that we attracted to or knew, so it just a real compliment to the fact that we're all have different elements of car culture. So I was there fanboying over folks that started Hooligan, or talking to Rob Dahm, who'd been to Dirtfish. Ryan, you knew some of the other drivers that were there. So it was just very eclectic, the fact we all had different folks we knew.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said you got a shout out, right, from Rob, was it?
Oh, Dirtfish got a shout out, yeah.
Dirtfish got a shout out.
So Rob Dahm, it was his rookie year. He was taking a rotary engined Mazda, so a pretty eclectic car for Pikes Peak. He plans to come back next year with an even higher horsepower vehicle, but he came to the school and took some tuition, and he also called out in one of his Instagram reels where he nearly went off the road. And he made a comment like, "Thanks, Dirtfish, for the advice here." So obviously he'd taken some of that tuition and it worked. So a nice little shout out and a big thank you to Rob.
Yeah, that was a rotary engine car, but there were multiple rotors, right? Yeah, it was quite the thing.
It's a beast. Yeah. I mean, he's an engineer, right? And we saw the car at the Fan Fest, and it had this massive wing on the back. And Alan, you'll adhere to this. He was able to measure the load that was being taken on that rear wing, and it was completely disproportionate to the amount of load at the front.
Oh, okay. Throwing balance off.
So completely. So this thing was like almost trying to fly, right? So when we saw him at the paddock, he had welded on 2 big wings on the front. So if you watch his run, he'd obviously counteracted the rear. I guess that's what you do, is that instead of reducing wing, you add more downforce at the front.
Well, no one ever wants to let go of downforce, so they try and balance it out in another way. So if you can, it's a little bit harder when you've got a lot of bodywork at the front and you're working just with smaller surface area. A big wing on the back is easy, but you definitely want to balance it out. If you can't, then you unfortunately have to stay safe. You have to trim something off the back. But yeah,
I thought it was super interesting. One day you see a car and it's completely evolved the next day, based on all the data and everything that they've managed to capture.
Well, that's what I was thinking as well. When you said about testing, like watching my old good friends at Rivian with Gardner Nichols and in the new quad motor Rivian, he went 30 seconds faster this time than his last year's run, which is huge. But watching on the lead up to the event, all the days that he's tested, they were completely different. I think it was wet, it was cloudy, so every run you do is different. It must be hard to get that rhythm or that timing right.
Yeah, it's so much, so many variables. I guess it's just, we saw the Rivian, it looked really cool. We saw it at the Fan Fest, didn't we? And unfortunately we didn't see your friend, but Yeah, we were rooting for
Great
them.
livery they have. The Rivian livery.
It was.
I like
Sort of
that. Yeah,
retro, isn't it? Did you notice his race suit? I don't know if you saw him in the suit. There is a mascot called I think what's his name, Gear Guard or something.
Okay.
And he's a bit of a sort of cartoon character. Anyway, the race suit was to kind of look like the Gear Guard mascot. So
And this
kind of
mascot
cool.
is
Oh, that's
based
so
on
cute.
you. Is that what I understand, Alan?
Yeah, big and
This is-
hairy. Yeah, exactly. That's me. I'm small and waxed. So.
It's good to be known for
Anyway,
something,
Well,
right?
Yeah.
Squad goals, guys.
There you go.
How do we move on from this? I'm not
Well,
sure
we don't.
Going back to the lead up. So I know it was a really early start for you guys. I think, what time did you leave in the morning? 1:30 in the morning or something?
Yeah, and guess who was driving? But what made it more early and more of a difficult start to get up was, I think we were 5 minutes down the road, 10 minutes down the road, Ryan,
Yeah.
and someone in the car who will remain nameless, but not on this call.
I think it may have been 20 minutes down the road.
Maybe 20 minutes down the road. It's really difficult to pretend that you're not pissed off when you're in a car with all your friends, but we had to turn back and go to the hotel and pick up some cameras. So William definitely owes us some beers, doesn't he?
Oh, there's the name. There we go. We got it now.
Yeah. We knew we'd get it out of him, right?
At the hotel.
It was tough, but we got there. So.
Dan's driving style from the first time we left the hotel to the second time we left the hotel. I mean, it was like he was in qualifying, but we made it. And I don't even really know why we got a hotel room that night, Dan, because we weren't there for very long. And I'm not convinced that we needed to leave as early as we did to spectate at the start line, right? I think next year, maybe we leave a little later. But sure enough, we got there. We saw the sunrise. We, gave us a story. Made it an adventure.
Your friend Colin has got it down to a T, hasn't he?
Yeah, drive up in your brand new 992 GT.
I think he
Walk
left
right
at
in,
6
8
a.m.,
o'clock.
didn't
Yeah. What's that?
He left the hotel at 6 a.m.
Oh yeah, that's the way to do it. But
Yeah.
you know what?
It was. I'm that guy as well. Like any race event, I like to get there as the sun's coming up, the atmosphere, the smells, the preparation, walk the paddock, see what tools or equipment or setup people are using. What can you learn from the event? For me, that's equally as interesting as actually the event itself, and it's a good time to sort of see people in action and see what they're focusing on. So I love getting there, and obviously the obligatory hot dog and stuff like that as well.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and events like where the cars aren't moving, if you want to see them moving, go and be there super early for load-in, like Luft or Air Water or any event. Pebble even, that's why they have Dawn Patrol, because that's when you're going to see the cars in motion. A lot of people go and they'll do just the sort of sunrise part, and then they're like, I'm good.
I'm done. Yeah.
In the accessibility, right? Here, I think is kind of unparalleled, right? You can get up and you can talk to anyone. You can get up and see anything. Like, it's so low key until it isn't, until the drivers sort of get that thing in their head where they know they're getting close. And then, which is interesting to see too.
Don't they?
Yeah.
And we were lucky enough to have media passes as well, so I kind of decided to camp out on, I think it was the third corner. Obviously the inside of the corner, for those that are listening and know about safety, you should never be on the outside of a corner if you're doing photography, but managed to get some good snaps. So that was a good bonus as well.
Pro tip.
That's awesome.
Like, I did not have a camera with me, but I had the orange vest. I was there as a journalist, right? But when you have an orange vest and you don't have a giant camera with a giant lens, you just sort of become an information officer for the event. I had more people come up to me asking me questions about where things were or when things started.
Yeah,
right, exactly. Because the media vest only says media on the back. So if they come up to you and they just think you're there to answer their questions, which is interesting. So next year I'm going to get one of those big, prop cameras or something, big giant lens, and just walk around. I think that's the key.
What time did the event kick off? What was the first run time?
7:30.
7:30. Yeah.
I think 7:30 was the first run. So we were on the mountain by 3. We were parked up. I decided to try
Jesus.
and have a sleep in the back of a Ford Edge, and it's the least most comfortable SUV I think you could
You're a
ever
pretty
have.
tall guy. You're a big guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the back door was open and the legs were hanging out and getting lots of random looks from people as they're walking in.
So picture this, if you will: three large men in a medium-sized crossover parked up right near the starting line on the side of the road. Dan's got the back up. We're all trying to sleep. I've got my Colorado Grand hooded raincoat over my head to try to block out the sun. It's cold. It seemed like a good idea at the time until all the cars started driving by. Every Harley Davidson, every diesel pickup truck. So did you actually sleep, Dan?
I don't know, but again,
Okay.
obviously the police as well with the lights.
Oh,
So
right,
you're there
as they
trying
would
to
bring
sleep, and all these lights
drivers
kind of
up.
going in your face, and
Yeah.
but it's all part
Oh,
of the experience, isn't
it
it?
is. It was a
That's why
scene.
we do it.
Yeah. Lots of was
So
it Nutri-Grain bars and
snacking.
anyway.
Red Bull.
Sorry,
Talk
Alan.
about some of the cars.
Yeah, Red
like,
Bull.
what was the
Absolutely.
what was the most interesting thing about the cars that you saw? What was your favorite car? What stood out about most of them? How many people do they have in the
Yeah,
team? I've never been. I
I,
have no idea. So
I think it was a combination, right? So some folks came seriously, they came to the race. So Hyundai, for example, they ran 4 or 5 cars, all electric, but they had a works team. So we're
wow.
talking works tents, we're talking multiple engineers per car.
Oh, wow.
There were a few rumors that went on during the weekend, and I don't know if they're true or not. So don't quote me on these and don't sue me on these. The first rumor was that one of the drivers for Hyundai wasn't comfortable with the car, and in particular the brakes, which is an interesting dynamic because obviously you're going uphill. So you still need your braking, Alan, right? But
Yeah.
I guess it's less of an important factor versus down, going
No,
downhill, for
the
example.
brake power, brake feel is huge in
Yeah.
any event for trail braking, and yeah, it's crucial.
Yeah. So the rumor was that this individual decided that the brakes weren't right for them and they weren't going to race. So Randy Post,
Hopes.
turned up, and he's obviously a veteran of the event, so he took over that seat.
Mm.
Oh,
So you
so
had
that
these
was
really
how
professional.
he got the spot, because I heard
That's
it
my
was.
understanding. Hey, don't sue me, Hyundai, please. But that was my understanding. You then had the homegrown folks, Chevy trucks with big V8s and
Yeah.
everything in between. There were some really cool, like almost rally cars, especially from the world of Audi. And I think Ryan, your buddy was running one of those, wasn't he?
Yeah, shout out to Trevor Aweda, who was on the steering committee a couple of times. Just a great guy, young guy. His dad also runs, and I think a Boss Mustang. More your side of things, Lindsay. And
Right.
so it was so cool because father and son in 2 very different cars finished back to back, both with really excellent times, which was pretty cool.
What a
What
great
a
experience!
father
as well.
son story that is,
Yeah.
right? And but
That's
got to
amazing.
say hi briefly to them, and it was it's and I think that's what makes this special, right? Because you have local guys like Trevor and his dad in cars that they've built. I mean, he's in an Audi 4000 with 700 horsepower, right? I mean, imagine
I
that's
was going to
literally
ask you.
7 times the power that arrived with, right? And to Dan's point, Hyundai and their whole crew, you knew the Hyundai people because they had these sort of baby blue jackets on, and they were just everywhere, so it was neat to see that level of investment in the event as well, and of course everything in between. I can't imagine when they ran motorcycles up into a few years ago, that would have had a whole other dynamic as well, but it's
So
it's a very unique
I
thing.
will say, actually, I heard you on Heritage Horsepower
Yeah,
podcast. I listened to that last night while I was cooking lasagna, and it was great. And I heard you
Thanks.
mentioned motorcycles used to run up, and I didn't know they
Yeah,
don't anymore because
yeah,
there was a guy, unfortunately, is no longer alive, Carlin Dunn, that his father used to run a Ducati dealership in Santa Barbara, and but he took up an electric motorcycle, and I think it was the first time an electric vehicle was faster than an internal combustion engine vehicle up there. He set that time. So, and like as you were saying, obviously the elevation affects horsepower,
yeah.
and where you don't get that in an EV. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Shout out to Maurice, who just does a great job with Horsepower Heritage, and I do want to correct one bit of misinformation that I provided on that show. I claimed that the first electric vehicle to run Pikes Peak was in the 50s. It was actually 1981. So for the record,
okay.
that's when the first electric, but even that's impressive. See, in my mind, 40 years ago is the 50s. Right? The problem is 40 years ago is now the 80s, right? So
Right.
anyway,
Yeah.
but
And the 90s were 10 years ago,
so-
right?
yeah, exactly. It's crazy.
Right.
It's
I'm
crazy.
still there. I'm still living the 90s. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So what was how long did the day last? What time did you leave there at the end of the day?
We left, it was still
Yeah.
light out, right? That's
Yeah, it was interesting. So, from what our friends who were there were saying, there were more stops this year than most years. So
Okay.
it meant that the flow of cars was slower up the hill. And it was a
Yeah.
combination of things. It was people going off. It was rocks on the track. So
Yeah.
they wanted to clear the track. So there was some delays in things happening. We got to see probably 60, 70% of the fleet. What did you say, Ryan?
yeah. And then eventually we
but-
wanted something to eat.
Yeah,
Well-
altitude is also an interesting
Yeah.
friend, right? You get up there, and I guess Ryan, you're probably a little bit more used to it. But it's it's what 8,000-9,000 feet, and
Just where we
for a
were.
Brit,
Yeah. And then it goes up.
Yeah.
So
just the level of oxygen levels means that you're thinking harder and you're talking slower, and so it does take it out of you on a day when it's so hot as well.
Yeah, everything takes more energy.
Lindsay, you were
So-
going to say, yeah.
Well, so I was going to ask, because I know, Ryan, I listened to the Horsepower Heritage episode where you shared about your Pikes experience, and you talked about the roadway being dynamic, and then Dan just mentioned the rocks. Were they having rock slides throughout the day?
I don't know if they were kicked up from cars, maybe on the shoulder, or if that was something else. You just never know. I mean, years past, there have been sheep, there have been deer. I saw
had
a
a
guy get
bear,
arrested who. Oh, really? I didn't see the bear.
2 years ago, there was a bear during practice,
Okay.
but they were saying, they're like in the driver's meeting, like, by the way, just FYI, there's a bear.
Yeah, there's a bear. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
it's
You never
Dan.
know.
It's okay. That's fine.
That's right. It's
Sorry, yeah,
got an orange
hungry
vest
Dan.
on. Yeah.
Like, how do we say this
it
nicely?
is interesting. Yeah. It is interesting wearing those orange vests because you feel like you kind of have you have to behave right the whole time. You do, And I alluded to someone I saw get arrested. That was someone who didn't have an orange vest but decided to go past one of the barriers in one of the turns, and so he was given an escort down off the mountain. So they take that stuff pretty seriously. Safety is number one for sure. But I'd love to have us all go out next year, guys. If this is something that
Yes.
interests you at all, fingers crossed they'll give us some media passes again. And it's one of those bucket list things for sure.
For sure.
Yeah,
So
next year's
great event.
significant. I was just
Great
going to say next
event.
year's
So
significant.
you guys obviously had a fantastic experience, but someone else on this call had a fantastic experience at a very cool place. Is it time to talk
meanwhile-
about that now? or-
On the West Coast,
Yeah. Lindsay,
Which
do tell.
are we talking about my event, my
Wait,
evening at
well,
GuntherWorks?
you were all across social media everywhere. There you
Yeah,
were,
living
into
it
this
up in your
thing
hot
that-
pink jacket. Yeah.
Yeah, what was that all about?
Can't get away with anything in that jacket, right?
Nope.
So
Do tell.
Verone, who runs Galpin Autosports, which is their division where they do a lot of the special aftermarket, they outfit off-road Cayennes and they do the Ford GT program through there, and just really cool division of Galpin. And he runs that, and he knows Peter Nam and Cecilia, who started GuntherWerks, and also Vorsteiner. And so he every now and then does he calls it a networking event, but it's also just, it's a great excuse to get together with friends and see everybody and see some amazing cars and see what's going on at GuntherWerks at the moment. So it's called Combustion with a K, and it's a celebration of internal combustion cars. So he gathered everybody at GuntherWerks on Saturday night. And, I always joke, it's a good car event when you're walking in and the parking lot show is as good as what you see when you get inside. So after a little bit, they had 2 of the 6x6 G-Wagons. I don't know if you guys saw
yeah.
on social media, but last year at Car Week, there was an armada of 4 special G wagons. It was 2 6x6, one of the Landaules, and then there was another one, and they were all just cruising Carmel and Monterey together. And I actually saw them one of the nights when I was going back to the hotel. I was like, what's going on with the traffic? And it was, they were trying to make a U-turn on Ocean in Carmel, which is not sized for 6x6s. So that was fun. And so the 2 6x6s showed up to the GuntherWerks event. So it was fun to see them in person. And then there was actually a Laguna Seca blue E36 M3 sedan, and that's an E46 color. So that caught my attention. That's one of my
Nice.
favorite E46 colors, and that's what my track car is, which is an E36 M3 sedan. So
Oh,
it was
yeah.
fun to see that combo, especially because it's like, if you know, you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And then there was an E36 M3 lightweight edition, which Paul Walker had one or two of those in his collection. And this one had a big wing on the back that they were using as a picnic tray, which was funny. And then they had a kind of a past and present pair of Acura NSX matching yellow. So that was cute. And then, Alan, I thought of you. There was a McLaren in this metallic bubblegum pink unicorn. I don't know if it was a wrap or not, but it was just spectacular. It was so outrageous that you're like, oh, I love it. It was so cute.
Fantastic.
So that was just in the
That's a
parking
really
lot.
Wow, that's an in color now. It's obviously Porsche have got their, I don't know the color. Someone's going to correct me on
ruby.
this, but yeah, and it actually looks really good. So I know
I'm like,
obviously the guys at Porsche and Clarita have got a collection of cars of varying
yes,
tones of it, and yeah, it's impressive. So, and do you know which McLaren it was, or shall I'll
I
go through
don't.
social media
I
and
will
find it?
send you a picture and we can find out. And then we can
Okay,
update later,
let's do it.
because I know, I'm like, I do know somebody that'll know right away, not to point
Yeah,
fingers,
exactly.
right? But it was just so
What's your
cool.
take?
And then go ahead,
No,
Ryan.
go ahead. I was just going to say, yeah. I was going to ask Alan what his take on it is on when you see, like, car manufacturers used to be really, really particular about the colors that they would paint their cars in. With I think the exception of like Rolls-Royce and Bentley, which you could do anything, and then some of the other manufacturers started to
Porsche
started to do
paint the
this.
sample, and
Yeah,
yep.
and now it's a cash cow, right? As
It
someone who
is.
actually,
McLaren have a division, MSO,
okay,
Special Ops, and
Right.
they do a lot of that sort of unique stuff now as well. So they do a really cool job. Yeah, it's a
as
Well,
thing.
it's like that
someone who was
one,
involved,
that MSO that I sent you the picture of from Malibu, that was just a gorgeous, super unique spec, the green one with the really
Oh
unique
yeah,
interior.
it's beautiful.
That's the equivalent of a PTS, because it was specially spec'd out like that.
Yep. Yeah, they do anything you want. Just write your
okay,
check.
that was my next question, Alan. Like, as someone who's actually involved in making these cars, anything off the table for you? I mean, Ferrari famously went after, who was the DJ that wrapped one of their cars? It wasn't even
Dead
paint.
Mouse.
It was right. It was a wrap, right? I mean, anything off the table for you, Alan?
In terms of paint and finish?
Yeah, like what people do with their cars after they take delivery.
No,
or,
not at all. Go for it.
yeah.
Have some fun. I probably was a traditionalist and like to keep things tame and consistent and on brand, on point. But now it's fun. I've
Yeah.
loosened up as I got older. So
It
do
happens
In your
to
old
us all,
age.
right? Life is short, right?
Yeah,
Right. If you
cover it
did,
in fake grass or something. Whatever. Have some fun.
I've seen that.
So,
That exists. That's
yeah.
Lindsay. You were with a friend at this event. Can you mention her name?
Sure. Yes. Well, and
Yeah.
I consider myself very lucky that there were a handful of good friends there, just the way we
Yeah.
all get to know each other in the car world. I went with my friend Laura Newton, who's that Porsche girl on Instagram. She and her partner Lee Lowridge were there. They're both big into the Porsche community here. And then Connie Summers was there. She's also in the Porsche world, but she's also just a general car enthusiast. She's got several Porsches. She actually also owns the 906 movie car from Ford versus Ferrari.
No way. Wow, that's
Yeah,
cool.
it's super cool. And so she bought it from another car friend, Tori Alonso, who's the VW expert. He's the one that restored the black VW that Zuckerman has. And he's friends
Oh.
with Jay and Nicole of Newcomb's and Good Vibes and Late Night Playset. So, everybody's connected. So Connie was there. It was great to see her. Bruce Brown was there. He's big in the Porsche community here. And Verone, of course, Lara, Lee, and then Lara's and my friend Arena, who was with Gateway Bronco. She was the one that facilitated us driving the Bronco that was at Quail. We got to drive it in September and got to know her through that because she was wrangling the car when it was in Southern California and doing marketing for Gateway. And then Billy Johnson, who's a race car driver, and he's done development for Ford. And this is what I love about the car world. It's so small. He walked in and he was wearing a shirt from one of the Cobra Owners Club events at Willow Springs that my family's gone to for probably decades at this point. And so we got to talking and we know a bunch of the same people. And he was out at the track coaching at the most recent Willow event, coaching one of the guys in the Cobra Club. And so I got to hear a little bit about his history. And it turns out he was one of the development drivers on the GT350R that they initially released in 2015, which is what I had, that I loved, Mustang. So we talked about that too. So it was a very fun evening.
Oh yeah. Everyone knows everyone, right? And this is how you roll. Ellen, I actually want to transition this just a little bit because something that's not on our list here, but something I want to talk to you about kind of on that note. You heard the news about about Volkswagen's investment in Rivian, right? And I heard Johnny Lieberman talking, I think it was on I don't know, maybe I guess it was the last
Pikes this
Smoking
week.
Tire. Oh, that's what it was. Okay. About how then there's the Scout business, right? That these electric trucks, some of the ex-Rivian people are involved with. Now you think the Rivian technology will make it back to Scout. Can you talk about this? And if so, what are your thoughts?
So obviously, this has all happened since I've left. So Rivian has invested a lot of effort, a lot of money, and a lot of time in a lot of bespoke software and integration. They bought a Scandinavian sat-nav EV specific bit of software, so they do have some cool stuff there that has a value. And clearly VW thinks it's $5 billion worth of value. I don't know if it's made up of anything else, but it will be interesting whether it's going to find its way into other VW vehicles or whether it's a Scout partnership or who knows, because there are a lot of ex-Rivian people that went to Scout as well, so very familiar names, faces, and processes. So be interesting to see. But it's great for Rivian. Sorry, not to linger on this too long. They've got they're exciting plans with R2 coming, and I'm sure the money will be welcome to make that a complete and polished product.
I ask only, because again, we're talking about everyone is kind of connected, and then you see that in practice, right? So it'll be interesting to see what comes from that. And Liz, you had an interesting car, right? For I think last couple of days too. You had an interesting loaner.
Did. Yes, it's been an interesting
you had a Beamer
experience.
in the shop?
I did, and it's been interesting all around because the car that needed to go in is a 2007, but there was actually an active recall on it, which is unusual for the age of the car. And so there was an issue with just a single wire, but they have had cars catch on fire because of that. So, that's certain repairs. You kind of go, okay, what's the runway? I can drive it until I can get it in to get it fixed. And fire, I'm not really willing to test the margin. So the car's been parked for about a month once I learned about the recall before I could get it in. So I called and set it up with the dealer and I requested a loaner, and that's something that's a very nice perk. If I have to go in and have a repair made, I can get a nice car.
Sure.
So it was super smooth checking the car in, getting the loaner. And so my X3 has the M package on it, which is a little bit sportier, stiffer suspension, that kind of thing. And it's a manual, which was fun because there was a lot of commentary and watching the reactions for people realizing it's a manual. A lot of the service advisors and the valets were going, "What? Wait a minute!" And when I went to pick it up at the end of the day, I had 2 offers from service advisors and one of the valets, all saying like, "Would you ever consider selling it?" So that was fun, and it's in really good shape, especially for the year of the car. And it's in good condition, so it doesn't look the age that it is, but So the loaner that they gave me was a 2024 X3M. So it was literally the car that I had turned in, but the most current version, which made it fun because it was a
Right.
real apples to apples comparison. It's always fun to try something new, but this was the extra, layer of like, okay, this is what I just turned in. And now I get to compare to whatever the most current version of it is. And it was ridiculously nice. I was
No manual though.
No manual. So that was
Yeah.
that's definitely a consideration. I missed that, but the car overall is just so nice, and the driving experience and the appointments and the tech. There's a
Yeah.
big difference between 2007 and 2024,
Oh,
obviously.
absolutely. Yeah.
Starting with when you
For
go to
better
get
or
in, because
worse, but
right. And my car doesn't have,
yeah.
I still have to use the key fob to open the door. This obviously had the touchpad unlock, 2 screens. One of them was a touch screen. The CarPlay was seamless. Very, very intuitive tech for the most part. I didn't explore a ton of it. The acceleration was incredibly comfortable.
Twice the power,
Climate was
maybe.
great.
It's
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't look at the specs, but it sure felt like,
Yeah.
there was
Yeah.
no hesitation,
But
as you'd expect. Yeah.
you know what I love
Really
about that,
nice.
Lindsay, is that the guys there who know still want your old one.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's so
Yeah. That
I
was
know that we
definitely a
have
fun little boost for the day. Yeah.
right.
Especially like the guys that want to like say the knowing it's a manual, it's not a big thing in the US, is it? Like pretty much like I'm gonna make a leap. 95% of the cars are autos. Is that
Yeah,
sitting
it's
about
kind of
right?
sad, isn't it? That's
Yeah, 'cause
Probably.
the only reason I
Well,
say is I had an old Boxster when I was out there, and just to sort of get me around, and I did a road trip up to San Francisco, stayed at a hotel, gave it to the valet guy, and he's like, I can't drive it. You're gonna have to park it for me. I'm like, that's your job.
this is
And
a
he said,
good
I
thing,
can't drive
Right.
the
Alan.
vehicle. So yeah, that's right.
well, that was the comment
That's
when I
interesting.
first when I turned the car in the morning. The guy went to get in, and immediately he goes, "Oh, the modern anti-theft device."
Oh yeah, Gen Z.
Not wrong.
Yes.
Not wrong. It's interesting,
No.
Lindsay. I've got an old crossover over here, my Tiguan, which also had a
Right.
random recall, or technically it was a technical service bulletin. So one of these things you don't have to bring in. It's not dangerous, but if you get a check engine light, bring it in. It was a
Yeah.
little tiny manifold flap that had to do with emissions. Didn't affect drivability at all. Would have been something like a $1,700 repair had I had to pay for it, but it was under warranty. So shout out to Ed Carroll, Audi, Porsche, Volkswagen up in Fort Collins, which is one of these old school dealerships that still sells those three in combination. Not much interesting on lot Porsche wise, except for they have this very cool Porsche transporter bus, which I've seen pop up at a couple of events here lately, put a picture on Instagram. So that was worth the trip in and of itself, and got the car fixed. And I was kind of hoping for
That's
something
really cool.
catastrophic, and then I could have got a new car. But I know we're on a bit
Well,
of a
yeah.
timeline today because two of you are off to Goodwood Festival of Speed. Alan, you're already over there. Dan, you've got to get there, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. But what's on the agenda for FOS this year?
You go first, Dan.
Well, I am excited to hear about something called Project Midnight.
Ooh.
If you follow Subaru Motorsports North America, then they've been teasing about it. Depending on when this goes out and when this doesn't go out, I might get either sued or at least defriended from LinkedIn. But what I can say is Subaru are very competitive when it comes to hill climbs. They work with a company called Vermont Sports Car Racing, who know how to build very quick hill climb cars. If you look at the Car and Driver shootout this year that they did on YouTube, it was the Air Slayer, which is a Vermont car, but it's a Subaru that got the record. It beat Garage 56. So I'm excited to see Project Midnight, which is a Subaru, and Scott Speed is going to be behind the wheel, taking it up the hill. So that's going to be really cool. And I'm also going to be with the rally folks from Dirtfish. So Steve, who's the owner, has a Lancia S4, and his son James will be taking that up the hill. So that'll be an exciting thing to watch as well.
That's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Whenever
I can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever I
I'm
hear that
looking
name,
forward to,
Scott Speed.
Sorry, I was going to say the RB17, the Red Bull technology supercar is going to be there. I don't know if it's going up the hill or it's just on show, but always love to go and see, a lot of trick engineering and cool Adrian Newey aero. So yeah, can't wait to see that as well.
Right on. I'm
Have the
envious.
best time. Yes.
FOMO.
I already have FOMO.
Yeah.
But between now and then, we have Silverstone. Obviously, the picture behind me, that's the Silverstone track, F1 track.
Right.
So today was my Friday. It was
Nice.
Thursday, but it's my Friday. Tomorrow, I'm up there with my daughter, her boyfriend, and her boyfriend's dad. So we're all,
How fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing. So
Let's hope it's Lando versus Max Part 2 then.
yeah, I think it's going to be the tone for the rest of the season, isn't it? So
Yeah, well, at least it makes it exciting, doesn't it? And we didn't hear the Dutch national anthem last weekend, which was a good thing.
A bit of relief.
Well, hope you guys have a wonderful time. So take lots of pictures. Maybe you can do a quick Instagram reel or something with, for us on our behalf. And
Yes.
well, we have the next guest, Andrew Marriott, and who was going to be on the call today. His flight was delayed, so hopefully I'm going to do it from Silverstone with him as well. So that will be amazing.
Fantastic.
That's so exciting.
Enjoy.
And I'll have so much fun, you guys. I can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, safe travels to you, Dan. Have fun this weekend. Lindsay, you're down in LA. Have a great time down there. We can tell by the rack of tires behind you that you are the real deal. Unlike my empty tool cabinets back here. I'm joking. There's stuff in there. It's just not what you think.
This is my homemade tire shop.
Right out. I love it. All right. Great to see you all. Until next time, we're the Road Show. Take care, everyone.
Cheers,
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.